Let's talk. Nice.
Welcome to this week's episode of Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe. My name is Spencer. I'm the Spencer part of this program.
My name is Zach, and I am the Zach part of this program.
And Zach and I, as you may know or may not know, are career musicians. And we have worked together over the years many times in many ways, but most notably when we were in a band called As Fast As together. And we had one of those old-fashioned record deals and toured around the country and all that kind of happy, our futures were so bright we had to wear shades, and then it didn't work out. And, as it turned out, the music industry didn't work out. And most acutely, it didn't work out because the pandemic came along and really drove a nail in it. And so Zach finds himself home from Los Angeles, where you've been for 8 years. Is that right?
Just about 8, yeah.
Yep. And so we have a guest today who is a friend of Zach's from Los Angeles, and has been brought in to kind of, make this conversation a little more bi-coastal and give us some perspective.
So today's guest is my friend, Ben Redell. Hi, Ben.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So, Ben, you are our first guest in this iteration of this podcast. So thanks again for joining us and being here. So I met Ben...
Zach, can I interrupt 1 second?
Oh, please do.
Sorry, Ben, I also want to thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, okay. That's all.
I was actually going to wait till afterwards to point out how rude Spencer was for not thanking you for being here. But
yeah. I was about to say something,
I'm used to Zach throwing me under the bus, so I didn't want to give him the pleasure of,
This is why we needed to bring on a guest, because you're already catching on to all my tricks.
Yeah.
So
tensions.
I wanted to mix things up for today.
We only made it a few episodes before shit hit the fan. It all fell apart. Egos are flaring out of control. Sabotage.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
So where was I?
So
I met I met Ben in my second year in Los Angeles. Somehow I made it an entire year living in that city without crossing paths with this gentleman who has his hands on basically everything in the music business in LA, or at least the independent side of things. Our bridge in meeting was our mutual friend Elijah Ocean, and our bridge and Elijah's bridge was our mutual friend Peter Donovan. Elijah moved to town and was immediately booking gigs and needed to put a band together. And Peter had recommended Ben as a bass player, and so that worked out great. But it turns out that Ben is not just a bass player; he is a songwriter. He is the general manager of Bedrock rehearsal and recording studios. He is a booker and a promoter, and basically just about anything in, I think, the Los Angeles and even greater California country music scene. Ben has probably somehow, in some way, been involved in either booking the show, playing the show, promoting the show. So I figured you would be a great guest to have on to help us talk about the whatever you want to call them, whatever the music business is going through right now. And also just because you represent the Los Angeles portion of my life, and because Spencer represents everything else. So Here we are.
That makes me feel both touched and also weirdly personally responsible for some things that might not be my fault.
You should feel that way.
Okay. So accurate. What we're going to talk about today is I want to focus on a movement called Save Our Stages, which is, as they like to say, a hashtag that is now turning into legislation. And the Gov has the opportunity to step up and save our stages. There's some legislation that is about to be voted on either by the time you listen to this they're being kind of vague about it. So I wish I could have a day like it's going to be voted on. But as of taping, we did not know the time that they were actually going to vote on this. It was legislation introduced by Amy Klobuchar and a Republican dude. Sorry.
I believe, I want to say John Cornyn from your home state of Texas.
Texas senator, if memory serves.
Okay.
Cornyn, I think.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, and so in a nutshell, this is a bill. It's an ask for the government to look towards the music industry, which is, as you may have heard this tagline a lot, but it is very true, the first to shut down and will be the last to reopen. And to quote my friend Lauren Wayne, who is a local promoter here and venue manager, what business has built into their business plan to not make any money and only lose money for a year or more? And the answer is, I don't know, not many, if any.
Yeah, it's not a viable business plan.
Yeah, maybe you plan for a shitty February, but like, a shitty 2020 through 2021. I don't know. Like that's a lot of foresight and a lot of planning. And so we aim to discuss in this show, obviously, like what we're facing on a national scale and locally here in Maine. If you're listening from Maine, where we are based out of, where the show is based out of, and we'd like to talk about that. We would like to talk about how we got here, so that the industry was so weak that the pandemic could threaten to shut it down entirely, right? And then, because I'm happy to, personally, like, talk about problems and your troubles and stuff like that, but I'm an action person and I'm a solution-based person, so I like to discuss what we can do, what you can do, what anyone can do to become part of what could be a solution to what is very clearly a problem. And I'm sure that everyone listening knows somebody who is personally affected by the shutdown of the music business, ranging from, you might know, an executive at a booking agency or a label, or you might know somebody who, made their living playing guitar, in clubs or just kind of like various gigs. So like there's all manner of people affected by this who there's nowhere to turn. It's not like, it's not like just Maine is experiencing this. Like there's very, very little live music happening and happening responsibly, certainly right now. So it's not like you can just turn and get a different music gig. It just doesn't happen. The only options right now are government assistance or finding a different job entirely, which is, not off the table, but certainly not ideal for millions of people who have put in their 10,000 hours to bring you awesome music, which I will remind the listener, you enjoy all day, every day, wherever you go, whether you try to or not. Music is everywhere. It's ubiquitous. So, on that note, I would like to thank our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Maine Spirits. Maine Spirits is responsible for bringing all of the spirits and liquors into the great state of Maine. You can learn more about them, the spirits they import, and what you can do with them to make delicious cocktails at mainspirits.com. You can follow them on Instagram at main_spirits, or you can download their app for your smartphone and learn all kinds of different recipes and things and ideas. They have lots of takeovers. They're doing really cool stuff. Additionally, we are brought to you by Bull Moose. Bull Moose has several locations throughout Maine and New Hampshire. They are open for safe retail, so you can go in and get all of your music, video games, posters, records, movies, posters, everything that's fun at Bull Moose is available either in-store or online at bullmoose.com. You can stay tuned for the Bull Moose Minute in the middle of the program. Also, I should have noted that we'll do happy hour at the end of the program and show you how to make a cocktail at home. So jumping back to the last sponsor. And now jumping forward to our third sponsor is Suntiki Studios, and you can find them at suntikistudios.com. They are a top-flight rehearsal and performance facility on Forest Avenue in Portland, Maine. They are closed for concerts at present, but they have opened themselves up to safe distance rehearsals. They're taking it very seriously. They're sanitizing, they're distancing. They have a crazy HVAC system that can switch the air out in the room, all these things. So they are doing their best to bend over backwards to make it safe for y'all to rehearse if you want to get the old band back together and write your protest song. And I think that wraps up the spiel.
Excellent spiel.
Thanks.
Well done.
I kind of fucked up with the main spirits thing, but I feel like I picked the ball back up.
Yeah, you did. You picked it up and you did well.
Thanks, man.
So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like every day that goes by, I'm losing a little bit of my identity.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone from, the guy who's either playing shows, a member of somebody's band, or mixing sound at a show, to now just being like this basement dwelling hermit that never sees or talks to people. Like, what is going on here? I've played a single show since the pandemic. When restaurants were first kind of starting to open and introduce like outdoor dining and stuff. I played, I think it was in maybe June or something like that. And I was so stressed out going into it. Like, this is probably a bad idea. And we got there. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but it was also just everything felt wrong. Like, we didn't, the band didn't rehearse just because, I don't know, we were like, where are we going to socially distance rehearse? Or, I guess Suntiki would be the place for that if you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. But we were just like, let's just learn these songs and go play. And it just felt weird, like seeing people walking around in masks and, sitting at tables distance, us like as far back away from people. It was just, I felt like we were part of the problem the whole time. I was like, people should not be out here dining anyway. Like, go eat at home. There's a pandemic going on. Mm-hmm. But also, like, I felt like I was part of the like attraction that was pulling people out of their homes to do that. I was like, this just doesn't feel right to me. And I know, other musicians are doing that because they have to. Like, that's, they got to make money somewhere. And if a restaurant or a bar is willing to pay them to play out on their patio or something, I personally didn't feel good about that. And a lot of shows are doing, a lot of bands are doing like the drive-in show and stuff. I think I haven't experienced that yet, but I think I would feel a little bit more comfortable with that. But I guess I have a question for you, Ben. Managing Bedrock, you're dealing with musicians walking in and out every day. I don't know if you're still doing how you're conducting rehearsals, or like what bands are rehearsing for, or like what is kind of the attitude with musicians in LA? I'm sure you have a lot more interaction than I do now, because I have interaction with nobody.
Yeah. So, just to let your listeners know, I want to start the whole conversation when it comes to all of this, with the severity of COVID, and that, as daunting as it makes the world feel, it is real as fuck. My colleague and one of the owners of Bedrock, Phil, got it. He went to the dentist and had his mouth open and had one of his molars being worked upon and got the disease, and it ravished him with fever for 2 weeks. He was fever dream induced, bedridden, and he basically made it out to be one of the most terrifying times of his entire life. And so I think that's the most important thing that we need to address y'all's listeners with, to a certain extent, that it's a real virus. With that being said, the way that Bedrock is operating is I'm only really doing curbside retail sales. So basically someone calls in the retail line, tells me what kind of drumsticks, what kind of guitar strings they want, and I ring them up over the phone and I bring it to their car. And currently, that's the only service I feel comfortable providing my clients. It's awesome to hear the ad about the place in Portland being open rehearsal wise, I wish that I was there as a business. But I have my trepidations when it comes to offering a safe service. And that story you told, Zach, about a show, it just seems insane. The idea of it was just so daunting and just so terrifying to be held responsible for promoting something that could potentially end lives and make people sick. And I feel for you, Zach. That's exactly how I would feel if I was put in that situation.
I mean, the difference being that, first of all, let's just put this on the table as well at the top of the show. We believe in science. We believe this disease is real. If you're kind of like a staunch anti-masker, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's a different podcast out there for you. But so when we talk about this stuff, everyone needs to know that no one on this call is being cavalier about this,
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the disparity between what you're comfortable with and what we're comfortable with here is dictated solely by our numbers and the number of cases, also the amount of space that we have to actually distance because of a much lighter population here. And though we are dealing with the tourism industry, you have we're supposed to have people quarantining, when they come up here, but they're just like, whatever. Like who has time to quarantine for 2 weeks and then start their vacation? Like that's also a weird thing. Like, how do you mitigate that? How do you enforce it? So, but yeah, I'm with you, Zach, that it seems dangerous and people should be staying at home. But additionally, science is telling us, the scientists are telling us, the CDC, our main CDC, if masks are worn and distance is kept, that the rate of transmission is very low, or the risk of rate of transmission is very low, and is very low. And it's because of the actions of our leadership here, despite leadership from the top, by he whose name shall not be mentioned. We are lucky to have good leadership here. And, we're already like a poor state. We're already broke. We're going to be super broke after this. And I do respect that, the number one priority was save lives. Do not overwhelm the hospitals. Let's stop the spread of this thing. And we're not without it here, but we're certainly in better shape than a lot of states are. And one of those states being California. And that's not because you don't have good leadership, but you just simply there's so many people. There's so many people in such concentrated areas.
Yeah, and I basically just wanted to preface the call with the importance of how serious it is, and I think that what I would like to derive for your listeners is basically a larger conversation about the importance of music and how our society views it. As a cultural entity that basically has been left by the wayside, not only financially, but also just culturally. We've kind of come to this perception that sports and entertainment, when it comes to television and movies, bears this financial importance that requires that everyone in that industry is multimillionaires, but we've just kind of let music fall to the wayside when it comes to basically taking care of music communities and music culture. And I don't know where that disconnect began. I think that it was probably when we were younger men in our 20s, when Napster and things of that came into fruition. But there's just been a disconnect, and I hope that in this troubling time when we're losing venues and musicians are losing their way of surviving, that society can potentially pull together and embrace music again. And I don't know what that takes. I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like it's almost like, 476 AD again, and we're just watching it all fall apart, and music and things of that ilk are just going to be something that's lost to another dark age. And that's my worry.
And it's a legitimate worry because, I mean, not that, not to insult the intelligence of the listener, but like, it's worth stating that like the music business is completely shut down. There's no action. That's not just clubs, that like radio stations have slowed down. Record labels aren't doing their thing. No one's doing their thing right now because no one can. And that is due to the pandemic. Certainly that it stopped so acutely. But like what we're looking at here, and I like where you're pointing the ship, is that, well, how did we get here? How is it that musicians can only make a living by performing for y'all in large groups? And that's and you brought up Napster. And that is a point in time. That was like a major turning point, which I don't solely blame Napster for. It's like, Napster happened and that became a thing that people can do. They can download music for free. Now, I think that that's a monster that was created by a greedy music industry, partially, like, which Zach and I were discussing previously without microphones on, that like, we have had record deals where you watch people spend exorbitant amounts of money on things that have nothing to do with the music, and kind of really devalue within the system, devalue the musician, and fight tooth and nail to not give them any money, just like the withhold funding, all these kind of like crazy stories that you've heard are true. And then like a lot of the crazy stories you're going to hear are actually from like good deals, where the artists were considered to some degree, but from the kind of greed and lifestyle choices that plagued the top of the pyramid, but then also like passing that on to, Zach, as you said earlier, I'll coin the phrase you said, like charging consumers $20 for a CD that costs them 38 cents to make. Like that's greedy. And then the music industry had its biggest year, I think, in 2001. Was it 2001? Is it early 2000s?
Early 2000s, maybe even like 99 or 2000. But I think it was like one of the boy bands, NSYNC, or maybe even like Britney Spears. It was that period of time where...
Yep.
Yeah.
They had like X amount of pre-sale, like they scanned like 1.3 million copies first week, something like that, right? That was the biggest moment, which was followed by the utter crash. People just stopped buying music. And here you have this industry that's used to spending all this money in these strange and unusual and useless ways, who built these deals based upon, well, we're going to spend all this money here and this, and here's the artist split, and then, well, we're going to charge $20. When people stopped spending $20 per CD to the tune of 1.3 million first week for one band, that severely changed the industry. And that's something that we were already kind of reeling from still to this day, from all of that. And that was how long ago? Like close to 20 years ago now? And we're still clawing our way up?
Even slightly over 20.
Which is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy that, so like the industry was always sort of built on the backs of the artists anyway, from the earliest days where it was just sheet music, like selling published sheet music, then to, the recording industry, which was the same thing, like songwriters didn't own their songs, didn't own their recordings. And that has sort of always been, occasionally there are artists that fight for the right to own their own recordings, but it has kind of just always been the case. It's like the artists were always sort of the last in line as far as like the consideration of where the money went. And that definitely like peaked at the $20 a CD. There might be one or two good songs on it that people want, but you have to pay the $20 to get those one or two songs. So as soon as Napster came around, or, the ability to download a song for free, of course people were going to jump on that and take it. Like, why wouldn't they? They've just been gouged for $20 for one song previous to that. But I think also at that point, the music business as a whole, and unfortunately, I think if they had done what I'm about to suggest, it still would have screwed the artists. But the business missed an opportunity there to be like, okay, here is the future. People are going to be downloading music and listening to it on their devices. Like, they're not going to pay for this physical thing anymore. How do we monetize this right now? And instead they were like, I know, let's just sue teenagers and make them buy CDs again.
Yeah.
And obviously that did not work out.
No. I mean, you're Lars Ulrich from Metallica famously suing teenagers, like specific teenagers for downloading his music, which is just like a bad look anyway, because like, I mean, he doesn't need to work another day in his life, but like, and then the industry then pivots to the 360 deal. So like, okay, so the deal that Zach and I had, for instance, with his Fast As was, we were basically, if everything had recouped, right? If we sold enough records and we're then rolling, we're above, the recoup line, which is a constantly moving goalpost because there's so much bullshit that was allowed to be expensed, right, on our behalf that we have to basically pay back before, we make ours. But we would have been making 8 cents on the dollar, and we had a good deal. 8 cents on the dollar split. Like how does that work? In what world does that work in? And I know that they'll say like, well, those deals are like kind of like open doors for renegotiation, all this stuff. But why is that on the table in the first place? But then also when the music did become available, because oftentimes CDs were cobbled together just around one single and just kind of put out there, and maybe they weren't like super great quality. It's not like it was nonstop Full Moon Fever coming out. Like young people are now downloading that for free, and I get it. I don't even blame them. Like, duh, obviously. But then that created the culture then where it's like recorded music has no value. Starting then, the recorded song has no value to people, and now we're like another generation past that. So like just now 2 generations learning that music has no value.
Absolutely, and I think that the paradigms of music business for the past 3 centuries, like the guy that wrote Camptown Races, like died impoverished and dying of like syphilis, brain disease, and never saw a penny to his name, after that print music that Zach mentioned. I think that we've just, as a society, just kind of began to disregard it as important to the core of our being. And I think that, I don't know, like maybe I think about this way too much because I've got nothing but time on my hands, but like, I just think of it as like a systemic issue when it comes to our existence as a globe, as a society, that we've just basically just kind of pushed music to like, okay, well, this is a commodity that we like and we need, and we want to play and we want to put it on our TikTok videos, but the actual like, worth of it is only tangible to the people that, put it out there, like labels and stuff like that. And the people that are making it, get 0.004 on a Spotify play kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think that we as a culture need to just realize how important music is. It's like step 3 in a civilization. It's like a caveman whistling. Mm-hmm. And we've somehow gotten so, caught up with our phones and our lives and our cars and our Facebook pages and Instagram feeds and TikTok, and like we've just stopped realizing that we're the evolution of cavemen, and we need these very rudimentary things like music that alter the brain and make it feel happy because it makes it go places that it wasn't before. And that imagination, that realization of a thing that's not in front of you is what makes us human. And I want to gear this conversation more to that. and basically how we're not going to be in clubs and in stadiums and in places like that for a while. And as a promoter and someone who's spent the predominance of my time when I'm not sleeping, I'm either at Bedrock facilitating rehearsals for bands, or I'd be at Grand Ole Echo, running sound, booking the bands, handing out drink tickets, doing my thing. Mm-hmm. We're a ways away from that. Mm-hmm. So I hope that the community in full can just let's step back and let's think about how we can make people in our world realize how important music is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've often...
Yeah, we were talking...
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Sorry. Spencer and I had a little conversation, and one of the things I had mentioned is that music has sort of become part of our everyday infrastructure, to the point where we, well, not us specifically, but as a whole, don't think about it. It's like when you get in your car and you drive down the street, you're not really thinking about the road. It's just there. But, your taxes and your tolls pay to maintain that road and keep it going. And it's kind of where music has come to, where it's like you turn on the TV, there's music playing in the background. You go to the dentist's office, there's music. Everywhere, everything you do, music is part of it.
Everywhere.
But as a society, people don't, it's just there, so they don't think about it anymore. And for the past 20 years, people haven't had to pay for it. So I think it's just sort of getting people back around to the point where there's obviously value in this because it's literally everywhere you go, but it doesn't pay for itself, and it never has. How do we get back to that, where people see the value in the music?
A lot of this conversation is way above my pay grade. You know what I mean? I don't know how much it costs to operate Spotify. I don't know, and so I'm not just going to sit there and be like, yes, we 0.004 cents, and it seems like I'm also part of the problem. I subscribe to that service, and I use it often, and I also am an artist on it and receive little to no money for it. And it's not like I have no streams. I don't have, I'm not newsflash. I'm not Beyonce big, but I'm a working musician.
Wait, what?
I'm sorry. Is that why you do this show? Because you thought I was going to break you? I
just realized that this audience is significantly smaller than I was under the impression it was.
Yes, very much. Very, very, very much so, if that's the assumption you were operating. But, how do you fix it on that level? I don't know. Do you institute government programs where there are now grants and funds for musicians, or exemptions, tax breaks, these types of things, leniency, is there rent compensation for music venues because that's a way to support the art? That conversation I don't know how to have, because I'm not a finance expert. I really I don't get it. I don't get how such complex fiscal matters come together. It's just beyond my comprehension. But one thing I do know that would work, because I'm a human person, is that people could take responsibility for themselves, right? And have accountability, and they could ask themselves a few questions, right? Am I listening to music? Do I like it? Yes, no. It's going to be yes, right? Everyone likes music. Even people who don't care about it like it. Did I pay for it? Yes, no. If yes, where are you spending your money? Did the artist get paid from that transaction? And if so, who paid the artist? And then I guess lastly would be, was the artist compensated fairly for the service provided? If you think about how long it takes to write a song, we're all songwriters here. Sometimes they come quickly, sometimes they don't. But it takes hours, if not days, sometimes weeks to write a song, depending on your efficiency. Some people work quicker than others, but it takes a long time to write a song. And then you have to record the song, and that takes time and costs money. So each song that passes by in 3.5 minutes might have, a month's work behind it. That's really difficult to say, but what I'm trying to illustrate is that it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to put that together. And people, seemed like they want to like good music that was written by people who understand how to write music. But like, how is it that that service provided that you enjoyed, that one enjoyed, I'll say you to the listener, how do you not pay for that in the same way that you would pay for a sandwich? And the same way that, you know, if your toilet was broken, you'd hire a plumber. You know, you wouldn't just like download a new toilet for free. You know, these things like cost money, and you might be like, well, you need to poop somewhere. Like, okay, that is true. And you might say like, well, food, you know, you need to sustain yourself. It's like, well, true, but you also have the option to shit in the woods. But we choose to afford not to do that. You also have the option of feeding yourself. You don't have to go out to a restaurant to eat, but people have no problem throwing down, you know, boom, go out to dinner with you and your wife, have like a few drinks, $150, boom, easy, right? No problem. Music in the background. How many times have you seen this? We've all seen this, and it's infuriating. $10 cover tonight. Like, what? That's so much. Like, you do less, and you know that Chad's going to go inside and crush, you know, 5 to 8 $8 craft beers. No problem. No problem. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, is that there's no value. You value the reason why you're coming to this particular box is because maybe you're not there to see the music, but you're there because people are there, and people are there to see music. And that someone could possibly devalue the efforts of so many people to bring them a good show. Like, let's call it a good product, you know, like, to sound like a total business person. Like, you work really hard. Like, let's pretend we make a thing, a tangible thing that you can hold in your hand. Like, we make chopping blocks, and we do a really good job, and that's a nice chopping block, and it has a fair market value. How have we got to the point, Ben, like you illustrated, where we chose to devalue music so much that we just don't care about it? And the argument that it's not a fundamental part of the lives we live is ridiculous, because like Zach said, every single thing, every event you go to, every door you walk into, every place the DMV has music, you know, it's everywhere. It's part of this. It's the soundtrack of your life, unless you're standing in the middle of the woods, you know, and even then there's birds singing songs. So checks in the mail, right? But how do we not place value on that which makes our lives better? How do we get to the point, you know, where we allowed it to happen, or people allowed it to happen? And now what I would say to the listener is it's frozen. And you have an opportunity right now to think about your relationship with music and how you value it and how you intend to value it moving forward. Because as of right now, you stop buying music, and I don't mean to be mean to the listener, but like these are truths. Y'all stop paying for music. So we have to come up with that money up front to make those recordings, which we're going to do because we are musicians. And then additionally, we now, because our only income stream has been taken due to forces beyond everyone's, well, not everyone's total control, #leadership, but like it has been taken away from us. And so now musicians, unless you're like, you've made it already and you have mad savings and you're good for, you can duke it out for 10 years, and great, good for you. But most musicians, and I mean most, cannot afford to not work. And if we expect any music to come out of this on the other end, and if we expect this industry to come back at all, if any of you are sitting at home thinking, man, I wish concerts, like I have a handful of concerts that I had were you know, my summer goalposts. Like, I'm looking forward to this. I'm not going to any of them. I miss it. I miss working. I miss going to see it. And it's a big part of my life. And like you said earlier, Zach, like a big, huge piece of your identity fades with every passing day. So I would ask the listener, like, what do you intend to do to value the music that you very clearly do enjoy in your life?
Yeah, I think that's, and also I just want to let the listeners know that, you know, I don't want to seem selfish when it comes to being a musician, like, oh, this was taken from me, because there's people across a myriad of different industries that had their livelihoods taken from them. And we're not alone in the regard of our suffering, but we these gripes are true. I think that I think the argument that we're making is not about the pandemic, but about how we need to fix that culture and to basically view music as a tangible good again. And how do you do that?
That's the thing. I think, like, across the board, the pandemic has revealed flaws in so many systems, like whether it's government or whether it's just the people working in the office building or whatever. There's so many things that have just become so normalized that we didn't think about them until all of a sudden it's like, okay, we can't go to the office anymore. Oh, it turns out I can stay home and work on my computer, or like, whatever it is, like, or yeah, all these like flawed institutions, whether it's how people are getting their health insurance or whatever. Like, oops, I tied my health insurance to my job, which doesn't exist anymore. That was a mistake during a health pandemic. Like, all these little things. And I think that's one of the things that is being revealed in music now too, is people are now seeing a little bit like, oh, I understand that how my not paying for music for this long is now made even worse by the fact that they can't even do what they were doing for the small peanuts that they were making before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start. It has to start with the individual. And Ben, you're right. Like, we're not alone in this. Many people are losing jobs. They're losing work. Their families are in potential peril. If they're not already, then they're facing into the void of like, what the hell happens in this shit show of an economy we're about to take a ride on. But like, so we just lost our first, in Portland, Maine, we just lost our first club, right? It's closed. Now, intellectually, I could process that. Like, okay, that makes sense. And I've kind of like processed it ahead of time. So I'm not like taken aback when it does happen. I've been kind of preparing myself for this inevitability. But like, what does that really mean? Well, it really means that it is closed. It's not closed right now. It's not coming back. And the people that work there don't have jobs anymore, where they already didn't have jobs. Maybe some of them did. Maybe they had partial staff on. It's over. And so all those people don't work there. And like, Portland has lost, with that club, because we're a small city, we've lost 1/6 of our performance space. That's devastating. Can you imagine if 1/6 of restaurants closed? If 1/6 of roads closed, like you just can't, like, that takes away so many opportunities for so many people, not just the artists, but all of the people who participate in the arts and make it possible for the public to see. Now, where do people like their music? Well, they want their music right downtown so they can go out to dinner and they go out to the show. What happens when your venue's downtown? It's expensive as fuck. So your overhead is through the roof. Like, you need every show to be a banger just to make a living. And people are under the misconception that, oh man, that place is packed all the time, they're killing it. It's like, yeah, no, but then you do also have examples of like larger conglomerate companies who are partaking in mad profiteering, gouging ticket prices, finding different revenue streams just to like, pick a little bit more. But like, the problem with that, and I don't begrudge anybody trying to like make their way and get theirs, that's fine. But it just seems like everything that has existed in modern music business, like from like 1900 on, does not turn back to the generator of the music. It's the musician. And I know it gets into like a tricky debate because like, what's the difference between a professional musician and a hobbyist, all that kind of stuff. Like, does everyone deserve the same shake? And I would say, like, if you listen to a person, regardless of their perceived skill set level or their perceived success level, if you were to hear the sound that they make and you enjoy it, would you consider compensating them for that rather than just assuming that they're being compensated, right? Or even worse, that they're fine with being broke. Oh, they're musicians. They're used to being broke. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to shit a diamond.
Well, Why, hello there. This is Zach Jones from Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe, and I am here with your Bull Moose Minute for the week beginning August 10th. This week, a brand new release from singer-songwriter Kathleen Edwards. It's her first record in 8 years. After the release of her previous record, Kathleen Edwards went through a bitter divorce, then another breakup, and depression just made her put down the guitar and walk away from the music business. This is a true story. She actually went back to suburban Ottawa, bought and opened a coffee shop, and worked 12-hour days selling coffee for 3 years before dipping her toes back into the music business in 2017, co-writing the song Good Woman for country star Maren Morris. But now, Kathleen Edwards is back with a brand new record. It's called Total Freedom. It comes out this week. Edwards says, "I've always been a self-deprecating person." That is true. Her coffee shop is called Quitter's Coffee. No joke. "I've always been a self-deprecating person, but sometimes I've let the self-deprecation take up too big of a space, and that's allowed me to not see things for what they are. I went and started this coffee shop, and I did it all on my own with money that I'd saved from music. And last year, when I was going through such a hard time in my personal life, I persevered and made a fucking record. I just sometimes think that maybe this whole thing has allowed me to stop and go, who knows what's ahead? Maybe I'll have to make some changes in my life for this reason or that reason. But holy fuck if I'm not resilient." Yes, she is. Kathleen Edwards, Total Freedom, out this week. Check it out. Also new this week, Valentine from legendary jazz guitarist Bill Frisell. The debut recording of guitarist Bill Frisell's trio with bassist Thomas Morgan and drummer Rudy Royston is a wide-ranging 13-song set that mixes Frisell originals, new and old, jazz standards, traditional songs, and covers. Valentine explores the creative freedom of the trio format and the profound musical relationship between these three musicians after years of touring. Valentine by Bill Frisell, this week at Bull Moose. Bull Moose has stores located throughout Maine and New Hampshire. They are at bullmoose.com. They are on Instagram at Bull Moose Stores. They have all of your needs, your music, your records, your LPs, your CDs, your posters, your books, your video games. You want it, Bull Moose has got it. Check them out, bullmoose.com, Bull Moose Stores. This has been your Bull Moose Minute. I was just going to say to either of you, I guess rhetorically, how many times have you told people that you're a musician and then they ask you what your day job is?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I started working at Bedrock in 2010, and that was the first time that I was actually proud to answer that question. Because basically that was the first time in my life where everything that I did was based in the music industry. And it took me a long ass time to get here. I moved to LA in 2002. I waited tables, I catered, I did housekeeping, I did basically anything that I could possibly do without a degree. Because I'm a college dropout, sadly.
Same here.
But
me too.
So yeah, that's absolutely the case. And, as a promoter, which I've done for Ground Echo for the past 8 years or so, to let the listeners know from the East Coast, it's basically like a country Americana show that's run earlier in the day. So in normal times, it's basically a show that runs from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock. It's kind of like a late afternoon kind of party thing. And for years, it was free. And so the bands didn't get paid at all. And, as time progressed, we moved the ticket up to $5 a pop. And I was able to pay the headliner $300. And then as time advanced, we moved the ticket to, I think, $7 last year. And so I was actually, for the first time in the legacy of a 15-year show, we were paying each band $100 with the headliner getting $3. And to put that into perspective of work, you break a band down, and that $100 basically goes $20 a pop. And granted, they are only working a hypothetical 1 hour for said $20. So, that looks good on paper to, someone on Capitol Hill, but that's there's a lot that goes into that hour of performance. There's probably 4 hours of rehearsal that each one of these bands did. There's their upkeep of their instruments when it comes to drum heads and guitar strings and bass strings.
Or just the instruments themselves to begin with, which is a very costly purchase.
Yeah, and so that $20 an hour whittles down real fast. And I'm just one promoter in a city of 8 million people and God knows how many venues. And that sucks about the Portland venue. We lost the Satellite this month, or in July, and that the writing was on the wall for that club. They were not doing that good anyway. But all the same, it's sobering, and
Yes.
it makes you realize the world you live in, kind of thing.
That was the first club that I read about closing after this. Or I guess they've kind of just changed their business model, right? Like, I mean, they've moved live music out of it, trying to exist on with another format, right?
Correct. They're just removing the stage and putting in tables and converting it to a restaurant, is my understanding.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're trying, but yeah, I read about the Satellite first, and then House of Machines is another venue in LA that played a few times. I think they closed that location, and so yeah, I think the writing is definitely on the wall for venues all across the country. And then we saw it happen in Portland, Maine, with Port City Music Hall.
Yeah, Rolling Stone actually did a bit on that, which is also kind of like sobering to see that, like, in that publication. Like, oof, like, this is real, and we don't have a lot of clubs to lose here. We really don't. We've got the State Theater is like the top of our our hierarchy, and we are told that, like, that is safe and will weather this storm, and I sincerely hope that. But, like, one thing when we were all kind of posting about Port City and mourning it and being like, wow, I think I posted was like, we just lost an arm, and and I know it's like well intended, but you have people saying like, well, maybe someone will like start a new club in that space, and it's like that, and hopefully that's true. You know what I mean? And I understand that the sentiment is a compassionate one and a silver lining, but it's like, a venue is not just the box and the gear. It's the people. It's the people that curate it. And then when that team is now disbanded, it's not to say another team can't come together, but like, you're losing a lot. A successful venue is successful because of the people that run it and because of the people that occupy the stage and all that stuff. But like with a venue specifically, it starts with the curating of the playlist, so to speak, right? The booking, the concert experience, the sound, like all these things that like you take into consideration and or don't, that a lot of people just take for granted, that you have to get right just so people won't complain. They're not even having fun yet. They're just not complaining, the band hasn't even hit the stage yet. And I guess I would just ask people, the listener, we keep saying listener. I feel like we should name the listener. Collectively, the listener name is Bob.
I don't know, Susan.
Bob.
Gordon and
What's the deal, Bob?
Both Sesame Street
Gordon and
characters.
Susan. Gordon, Susan. Sesame Street drop. Ba-ba-bow. But yeah, I would ask Gordon and Susan, like, okay, here's what I do. For instance, here's an example of how you can support the music business. I'm in it and I support it. I'm an active part of it. When I go to a show, I pay the cover. You know what I mean? Even though being oftentimes offered a guest list spot as often as I can, or as I'm allowed to, or whatever, I pay because it has value. When I listen to a music, like there's a band called Woods that there's a song of theirs that just like, it just dug in and it meant the world to me. And I listened to it, like, if that song has 100,000 plays of it, on Spotify, 1,000 of them are me, And I just realized one day, like, I love this, and I went down to Bull Moose and I bought their CD. You know what I mean? There, I have participated. It can be just that simple. You don't have to like start like a fund. You don't have to like, dedicate like all this crazy money to it, but just participate in it in the same way that if you wanted a delicious beverage, you would buy that beverage, right? If you're enjoying it, and it's like with Spotify, you are paying for the ability to stream just about anything almost ever recorded at your fingertips. You're paying for the convenience of that. Sadly, with your $10 a month or $12 or whatever it is, you're not paying the artist shit. You're not paying the artist shit, and Spotify is not paying the artist shit. So you need to know that. Just know that, and if you have an artist that you love, like I don't buy CDs anymore. Like in the case of the Woods, I bought the CD because that's what was available to me. But I'll buy their vinyl because I have vinyl at home. I'll find some way to support them. Maybe even go online, order a T-shirt or something. Just find a way to support them. Or, and I think we're going to see a lot of this lately, or moving forward rather, that you could Bandcamp kind of has a model like that. You can donate to the artist. Maybe the people have their Venmos. Just like throw them some bucks. Like I enjoyed your honor system. I enjoyed your system because one thing, if we all banded together behind like a paywall, right, and said like, okay, no one's getting the music. You have to pay this much to get in the music. Then there's always going to be people who are not going to do that, and then they're just going to put it out there and devalue themselves, which we've all done. We're guilty of devaluing ourselves, although I don't know how we would have kept the water from coming into the ship, honestly. But we're collectively devalued, so let's remove fault. Maybe it's the artist, maybe it's the record industry, and maybe it's the consumer, and likely it is all three, right? All three contributed to the devaluing of music. So if we can take responsibility now faced with a completely shut down music industry that Ben, you alluded to earlier, we're not opening up anytime soon. We're looking at like a year. Like we'd be lucky to have some of it back in a year. Like this is going to be bad. And if you value music and you miss it and you want people to make it, like look at what you're doing like right now. Look at what you listen to right now and ask yourself how you're benefiting the people that made that, and would you like to hear more from them? Or do you just think that like maybe if the artists aren't with us anymore, that maybe their family could benefit from their ancestors' hard work and find a way to get money to an artist or an artist's estate, or you know what I mean? Like it can be done. There's all kinds of ways to support people. Like we have, like Venmo and PayPal have made it easier than ever, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I don't know, as a culture, we've just kind of let the internet just basically put everything at our fingertips, and everything is just acquirable. And there's a complacency in having that sort of freedom. With that being said, I think that what has occurred is that over the past 20 years, people have just kind of fallen by, they're just, it's easy to do, to just look up a song, let it play, and you're good to go. I mean, sometimes you search it on YouTube and you got to watch like a Gillette commercial for 5 seconds and you can skip the ad. But that Gillette commercial that you skip an ad for, it's not paying the artist enough.
No.
And it's one of those things I'll never understand about Spotify, because when you read about it in the trade magazines, it's lost money for, its entire, career of being a music carrier. And it's astounding to me that, all these people are paying $10 a month, to be ad free on it. But the model is not even working on the corporate side.
No shit.
And so even the corporate, top dogs with their cigars in their mouths are not making money on music. And so there's got to be something even before that we've got to address as a culture. Because even the fat cats aren't making the money on music anymore, then what is this value? What is it intrinsic actual worth? And that's what's being lost in the shuffle, I think.
So when when the early days of whoever was like, we need to start a streaming service because that's how people are going to listen to music now. In the case of Spotify and whatever else is out there, it became another early example of how the industry at large was able to make money before any of the artists could. Because say you're Spotify and you're like, I'm going to launch this service and I want to have all of the world's music available. That means I need to have the Columbia Records catalog. I need to have the Warner Brothers catalog. I need to have all that stuff. And they're like, how do I get that? And in most cases, those companies own the rights to the music, not the artists. And so they, I think, upfront paid those labels, a substantial amount of money just so the music would be available on their platforms. But so, there was some money made by somebody in the deal, but when you and I put our music on there, we're getting a fraction of a penny per stream, and it's not. And even for I think Pharrell posted one thing, I think when Happy was a hit, where he had however many million streams that accumulated into thousands of dollars or something like that. It wasn't like you've got one of the biggest singles ever released and you're rolling in money now. It was like, oh, he's like. It's like he sold a used car was basically the money he had to show for it.
Yeah. Bette Midler posted, and I can't tell you how many times we reference Bet on this show, but
yeah, we do talk about Bette Midler.
Hey, she's the queen. I don't blame you.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, she posted something similar. The Wind Beneath My Wings, whatever, 1.4 million spins, and it was $134 or something. It's like, what? And this is an example of Pharrell and Bette Midler are doing well. So you might be like, oh, whatever, they're rich. But it's that's not how it works. They have organizations that they're paying for. They have management. They have crew. They have, they need to keep, it's an ecosystem. And you can't just eye roll people at the top and be like,
Well, they're able to subsidize their finances with advertising and brand management and all this other stuff that smaller artists don't have the ability to do.
That's right.
So they have a leg up, and that's fair. That's how the world works. But that should not be the only financial resource for musicians. Is okay, well, my actual music is only going to make me about $1,000 online if I get 1 million streams, but I got to get a hat deal or I got to get a shoe deal to pay my way, unless you want to have a real job kind of thing.
Yeah, and that goes back to the get a real job argument, which to me is that is also that generates a second diamond to be shit. It's and I don't want to hear that. For myself, I'll just speak for myself. I don't want to fucking hear that. I've put in my 10,000 hours 10,000 times over. I don't need to hear it. I work hard at what I do, and I try to be very good at what I do, and I'm proud of the work that I put out there. Just like any craftsperson, just like if I was a carpenter and I was good at making tabletops, you know what I mean? It's maybe my tabletops aren't for everybody, and maybe I won't sell 1 million of them, but I don't want to hear that I don't have a real job, and none of us want to hear that. Because
let me interject on this because it just kind of came to mind. But a lot of I saw a bunch of a lot of my good friends in the country world speak up about Black Lives Matters and George Floyd, and kind of maybe you should get a real job. The other angle of that is, why don't you stick to music? That sort of deference towards musicians, as if we're just dumb, cavemen beating on a drum, and we don't see the world and we don't have a viewpoint, is just astounding to me. That basically you are subjugated to being a musician that doesn't make money, that doesn't get the respect of your peers because that's your job, and I have a real job. And that perspective is all part of this bigger problem that that we're underpaid. We're not worth the same consideration as a common citizen. It infuriates me to no end. And that I got so mad, during June and all the BLM stuff, that musicians were just like, every time someone spoke up in the country world, that was the cue on social media was, why don't you stick to music? Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
why don't you stop listening to my music that you're not paying for?
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, Zach and I were talking about this earlier. Like, there is a direct correlation between Black Lives Matter and music. A very direct correlation in that, the very foundation of American music rests on the shoulders of Black artists. Period.
Absolutely.
And who very rarely have been a piece of like the business beyond representing the artists. I mean, obviously you have some entrepreneurs who have started their own labels because they didn't get to play ball at the big league, whatever major label level without starting it themselves. But just like we did an episode on whitewashing in Hollywood, specifically, like, white actors voicing cartoon characters that are people of color. And there's like a very similar thing in a lot of the decision making in the music world, where it's like, you're representing artists that are often people of color, but the people in the boardrooms and all that stuff, and making the marketing and business decisions are, that representation is not there behind the scenes. So that's another thing I think moving forward, when however the music business rebuilds from this collapse, is it definitely needs to have a more diverse field of voices across the board, not just in the artists whose music we're listening to.
I think Jeff Tweedy brought up some way. I think he was, I believe, from Wilco. He was calling to action. I think it was the PROs, CSAC, ASCAP, and for if you're listening, these are
performance rights organizations.
Right. So it's like these are the organizations that collect on the artist's behalf, like radio play, the meager Spotify income, like anything like that. Like they're the people that collect for us and then take a huge gob of it because they have to have their huge offices in Nashville, and then pass it on to us. But I think Jeff Tweedy was saying that there needs to be some amount, or there should be, like in an artist-driven way, like to give back to the multitude of artists of color who are the foundation of all of the music that we make, and get them money. Zach, you were telling me a story earlier about the Rolling Stones.
Yes. So, the Rolling Stones are named after a Muddy Waters song. They basically started out as like a blues cover band. And yeah, they're huge Muddy Waters fans. So they were in Chicago, like really early in their, in the British invasion side of things. And they decided they were going to go record at Chess Records because that's where all their heroes recorded. And they walked in there, and Muddy Waters is in the lobby, painting the lobby. And they're like, "Oh my God, like our idol, our hero, we cover your songs. We named our band after you. This is amazing. What are you doing painting the lobby?" And he's like, "I'm just trying to earn a couple extra bucks."
Which is so fucked up.
Yeah, no, that is super. And I mean, yeah, that's it. There's so many things that we've got to fix, that I really wish that we got to get away from this like individualist ego American state and just become more compassionate in general. Not only towards race, not only towards the LGBTQ community, just across the fucking board. We're like all the Karens and all the like people that are screaming that I'm being muzzled. That's what's wrong with America. And I know that that's kind of topical to where we are as a country right now, but in the broader scope, I really think that people just have to think as a community again.
Yes.
you can call that socialist banter all you want, but I'm sorry, I don't think that this I've got mine, so fuck you mentality is gonna get America anywhere when it comes to a cultural, win in any way, shape, or form. And we're sliding down the scale into Banana Republic third world, every step of the way when we do that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, the fact that, even in my genre, which is country music, it is based on black music. The banjo comes from Africa, and so the people have to realize that, black people need respect for what they have done for music, and it's astounding when someone doesn't understand that.
Respect, credit, and money, right? All of it. Like, I don't think that you're being socialist. In fact, you could even call it capitalist. You can call it what you want. I think that there are conservative Republicans who would agree with the sentiment that one should be paid a fair wage for that which they produce and is consumed. Okay, great. I invented a toy that no one bought. I had an idea, and I went to the bank, right? And I was like, I'm going to make whoop-de-doos. You wear them on the end of your nose, and every time you fart, it turns purple, right? And the bank's like, that sounds good. And here's your loan for your startup business, because I'm going to sell my whoop-de-doos for this much money. And I'm hoping to sell this many. And by this, you'll have all your fiscal reports together, your P&Ls, you're ready to go. And the bank's like, that sounds good. Here's your loan for whoop-de-doos. Could you imagine walking into a bank and saying, I need to make a record, and then I need a loan because it's going to cost me $50,000 to make it and then promote it afterwards? You'd be laughed out of the bank. Like, I would spit take. If I had water in my mouth, I'd spit take if I heard you say that right now. Imagine getting a loan to make a record. And you know why we can't get a loan to make a fucking record? Is because people don't value music. Not to take it away from artists of color and the attention that needs to be paid, but it's part of the whole thing. Like, the whole idea of music, the whole idea that music is free and that you can just take it because you're entitled to it, is horseshit. And I need what I think, if we are to be a solution-oriented podcast, which I intend to be, right? What do we need from you? Have these discussions. Look in the mirror. Look at yourself. Look at how you engage music, and talk about it. And think about it. Like, there's nothing wrong with leaving musicians a tip. It can be as simple as that. You're at a place, somebody's playing guitar in the background, you're like, I really enjoyed that. Leave them a tip. Don't assume that people are getting paid, because they're likely, especially with musicians, I'll say this, they're likely not. They're likely not. Mm-hmm. And then the more...
That would be actually...
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in pre-pandemic times, if somebody specifically was just like, tell me what I can do to help, my number one thing would just be like, go to a show, pay the cover. If you like the music, if you don't have a CD player, buy a T-shirt, or just leave them a tip, whatever. It's like anything that puts, and especially, like we were talking about, like, obviously it helps the artist when you buy an album through retail, but if you're at the show and you buy the CD from the artist, like, they're not even giving up a percentage of it, that's so, any of that sort of direct thing. But of course, that's all now complicated by the fact there are no shows. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but we should be looking at this like, yes, there are no shows. And musicians, and just to make it about musicians, and I do not mean any disrespect to our colleagues who are involved in music, but not maybe making music directly. Everyone's an important part of this whole thing. But to speak just directly to musicians, like, just, I don't know, look at what you can do to support and to partake in that conversation, and recognize that support means something. It really, really does. And it's already hard enough of a slog. And also, let's lose this whole idea of like, oh, well, what if you make it big? Guess what? You're not gonna. Most musicians aren't gonna. And to bait millions of people with this idea, like, well, you're reaching for the brass ring, thanks American Idol, you're not gonna win at art. It's not gonna happen. And if you work and you do a good job and people enjoy what you do and you know what I mean, you should be hired to do that, and then create like a healthy industry that can then start to take care of its own. And we have our own reckoning, as we addressed a little bit earlier. Like, we need to fix how we're passing whatever money we do have around in this industry. We need to fix where that's going. We really do. You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, Kanye West, who's married to a billionaire, got a PPE loan of like millions of dollars during the pandemic.
Oh, good.
Which is, you know, baffling to no end. And like, you know, when it comes to like when all that stuff was being doled out, it was all going to like evangelical churches and fucking corporations. Mm-hmm. And
the Los Angeles Lakers got a PPE loan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's who's getting the kickbacks in times.
The only musicians I know that got unemployment have their own LLCs, right? Like they're functional limited liability corporations. How many musicians do you know that have LLCs? You know what I mean?
None.
Oh,
None
come
at all.
on, very few. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail your point there.
No, I mean, that's just it, is that we don't subsidize the arts, you know. Like, you know, Republicans laugh at, like, you know, Trump was gung-ho about, like, gutting PBS.
Yeah, I know.
Like, you know, because, we're injecting children with this socialist Sesame Street. You know, we got to get rid of this crap. And it's systemic to basically where I know I don't want to make it a partisan issue, but it kind of has become one when, you know, the arts is literally viewed as, you know, something that is superfluous. And that kind of goes back to my core tenet of this conversation is we've got to pivot away from that as a culture. We've got to figure out how to, you know, bring government and our culture in whole into respecting what we do, you know. And how do you do that? What are the steps? I mean, I you know, the three of us probably don't have all the abject answers to that, but, you know, that's you know, I think that's the core of all of this, because we've got nothing but time of our hands to pontificate this until we can actually get back into playing, you know?
Well, I mean, one thing, and I'm no stranger to and am a proponent of, you know, paying your dues and doing hard work. One thing that we can do as artists is to, if we are looking for respect from others, we must then respect ourselves. And look at what we're doing, how we're carrying ourselves, you know what I mean, how we're treating ourselves, how we're treating others, all of these things, like, and just tighten it up, because it's not a fantasy playland where it's like, you know, glam glitz, like, oh, and then we were doing drugs with, you know, Keith Moon, man. Well, you know, great, Keith Moon's dead, the music industry's dead. Like, cut the party down. Let's figure out how to do this sustainably, how to care for each other, how to care for yourselves and care for one another. Backline is a great organization that addresses mental health for people in our industry, a very important thing right now. I think you can, they're at backline.org, I believe. And then to kind of tie it back to what we're talking about, if you are interested as a listener to being part in this legislation, and this is a Band-Aid, but we need it right now. We need the Gov to step in and start cutting some checks so that venues can stay open. So we'll have places to work when this blows over, whenever that is. And you can learn more about that at Niva Assoc, so NIVASSOC.org. Searchable on Google with Niva or hashtag Save Our Stages. There's a very, very short like little survey you can fill out, and just hit you put in your info and hit send, and it will generate letters to your senators on your behalf. Or you can write your own, but like, you know, I didn't choose to rewrite it. It looked like they put a lot of thought into it. And it's about numbers at this point. I don't think like Angus King is being like, oh, you know, smoking a pipe and reading, This is what somebody has to say from this. It's not about that. It's about sheer numbers. If you love music, help us out. You know, you're talking to 3 people who are, for the most part, if it were not for our ability to pivot, right, and do other things, if we were solely dependent upon performance income, this is 3 people. You're listening to 3 people who have no work and no hope of working for a long time, and we are 3 of millions of people. Yeah.
To the listeners, I also, Neva's on Instagram. You can follow them there. They've got some amazing content. They're putting the word out, and yeah, it's something that our industry needs. And I couldn't expound more than you just did. It really is important. We need to back this kind of funding to keep our venues alive, because that is that's the backbone of the industry. And I couldn't concur more, Spencer, when it comes to basically musicians need to hold their shoulders up. You don't have to just stick to music, and you're not dumb. You're not a sociopath for believing in your dreams. My parents had trepidations about me entering this industry, and luckily I was able to quelch them with a pretty successful career before the pandemic. But with that being said, I know that there's going to be a lot of people, and for the younger listeners, there's going to be a lot of people in your life, if you're a musician, that are going to tell you that, you're making a mistake, and your dreams don't matter. And that's the kind of roadblock, that people that, express themselves musically have to endure. They have to, basically put up with the social perils of what their dream is not, it's not tangible, and it's completely unfair. And, yes, there are some musicians that are not as good as other musicians. That's going to be the reality in any craft. Any craft. Whether you're an architect, whether you're a doctor, there's always going to be someone that's better than you.
Stockbroker. Doesn't matter.
But you are worth something, and your dream's worth something, and we've got to embrace our dreamers. And you look at someone who doesn't listen to music, and that's sociopath right there.
Yeah.
Someone that doesn't enjoy art, someone that doesn't see its value. That's someone who's wrong in the head. Not someone who is actually dreaming and creating and imagining something. And we have to embrace that. That has to be something that is idealized again. I feel like, when you look at ancient cultures, the Socrates and the Sophocleses of their era were regarded as heroes, and we have to get back to that.
So, first of all, I want to apologize to our listeners that Ben mentioned "he who shall not be named" by name.
I already bleeped it out.
Oh, fuck, I'm sorry.
No, you didn't know. You didn't know. That's fine. His name will be replaced with the sound of human flatulence.
There we go. Yeah. But also, I want to, your point is so absolutely dead on. I mean, even John Lennon was told by his aunt, the guitar is all well and good, but you'll never make any money from it. Oops.
Yeah.
Oops. But also, I want to ask you guys this. We are all old now. And, I assume we all probably started working professional-ish around the same age, like, late teens and then really early 20s. People that are that age now, like the 18 to 21-year-olds that are like getting into trying to start their professional music careers, they are the people that have had the internet the entire time and have probably never bought a physical item and are most likely the people that are going to be, in the midst of whatever rises from the ashes of the old music business afterwards. I mean, I don't even know where to be, like, what that even looks like for them, and I can't even envision it myself because I'm so like out of touch with anything that's not like the old music industry that basically I've spent my career just watching go down in flames.
I mean, firstly, like I know you're like half kidding, but I want to note that like we are approaching or in middle age, right? And not old. And also, I would argue that I personally feel as though I'm entering my prime. And I don't say that from a place of desperation, but I literally think that I am better at everything except for being a self-destructive idiot right now. Right? I was way better at that in my 20s. It was, not
Which means that you're better at just general humaning.
I feel that way. So like I feel like I'm sincerely in my prime, and that there is like, that whole idea that like, you're either like a 20-something like sex symbol or you're out is bullshit, because Tom Petty made Full Moon Fever when he was 40. Firstly that. Secondly, if you are a younger musician who is participating in the industry, participate in your own industry. Period. Participate. Like, don't assume everything's for free. Like, I don't want to sound like that. I don't want to sound old. Like, the only way this is going to work is if we, like we were saying earlier, like, pull our shoulders back, right? Like, be part of it, have accountability, and participate in your own industry if you want people to participate in your industry, because otherwise that's hypocritical.
100%. Zach can attest to, how we do it here in Los Angeles with the kind of country Americana rock community. It's like, we're a family. We go to all of our shows. We're all friends. Like, it is tight knit, and community is 100% what propels the Los Angeles scene here. I not to pat myself on the back, but my altruistic natural intent has always been to basically try to, generate more of that, because, I see that as the ultimate great hang, is when all my friends are there and they're all musicians, and we're drinking beer and smoking joints and loving the music. And yeah, it's a little bit of reckless abandon, but everyone does it. We keep it. Yeah, we have fun with it, and
we get to drink beers and smoke joints and watch music too. It's not just for the audience. We are the audience. We are additionally, we make it and we consume it.
Absolutely, and that's kind of what I like to project on a local side when it comes to Los Angeles, and to the younger, contingent of this conversation. I think that they are in a position of, I envy them to a certain extent. To basically, they had Wikipedia and Spotify and YouTube and all these resources that the three of us didn't, when we were teenagers. I had to watch Alternative Nation in 120 minutes to basically tell me what was cool. And I only got that like an hour a day kind of thing. And, now the younger generation can just pull all this stuff up on their phone in seconds. And so, I think that that's their benefit. And culturally, I think it gives them a leg up. But in regards to Zach's point, they're a generation that's never had to pay for music. And so why would they start? I think the pivot there is to basically encourage them to do just that, and to become part of a community of whatever genre of music you're into. In pre-pandemic times, I'd get funny calls from like kids in the Midwest, and they would call Bedrock and be like, "Hey, I've Google searched you, Ben Redell, and I want to know, how do I get into the music industry?" And I feel like so humble on my end when that call comes in, and I'm like, oh man, I made 100 mistakes before I made a right one, kid. I'm the last person you want to ask. But, what I always tell those kids in those situations is like, find out what kind of music you're into, go to whatever local scene is doing shows of that regard, and just start talking to people. Mm-hmm. And that's how you make it in the music industry, is you make friends, you songwrite with other people, you listen to what other people are doing, you get better, you grow. And, that's the thing. I'm pretty much lamenting on the past 20 years of my life, and that's how I've evolved and how I've existed, is just by, being a social person that went out and, tried to rub shoulders with as many people as I possibly could. And I guess, that's all that we really have left as an industry. Mm-hmm. And, now that that's gone, the currency for becoming better as a musician or becoming more successful as a musician, the roads are slowly dwindling that lead there. Mm-hmm. And that's why, NEVA and places like Music Cares, you can't begin to see how important those things are right now, because the only leg we're standing on is, the potential to entertain. And we need those resources before we can ever even imagine, getting bigger and better. And I hope that's the goal. I hope that's what we do as a society. But we gotta prop up the things and the resources that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's triage right now. Let's end on a fun note. The two of you, what if you could? Let's pretend the pandemic has been squelched. It is now safe to go to a concert. And I'm not doing Alive or Dead because that's ridiculous, because it couldn't happen. But what artist would you like to see, and where would you like to see them? Your dream show.
I'll let you kick it off, Zach.
All right. This is actually gonna, I don't know, might sound like pandering. I just want to hang out with my friends, like I want to see my friends on stage, and I want to be at that event where I'm like, we're drinking beer together, watching our friends perform. Maybe it's just like a Grand Old Echo or something like that, where, there's a bunch of bands playing. I'm friends with everybody in the band. Like, we're doing this again and we're celebrating it again. Like, that to me at this moment would have even more value than, I was going to say bringing the Beatles back together, but okay, maybe that's the exception.
Can't do that. Well, I was going to say one thing, but now that you said that, I will say that I cannot wait to go see there's an orphanage here in Portland that has a small choir, and I just so badly want to hear them. I just want to hear them harmonize together. They're beautiful children's voices. Yeah.
And then help them all find nice, loving families.
Yeah, totally.
Afterwards.
Adopt the lot. I would. I'm torn between. I have this one show that I've always wanted to see, which is McCartney playing all deep cuts and B-sides show. For which there would be no amount of money I wouldn't pay to see. But realistically, I would like to see Bonnie Raitt at the State Theater, because I think that's who I could sit in the chair and listen to her sing and play. And just like, maybe just be like, we made it. And that would be a good soundtrack to that for me.
I'm going to go on a staple of my youth and say that a Bob Seger concert would probably be probably one of the most transcendent things I could go through right now. I think he was slated to be in the LA area August this year or something like that. And I was stoked. Mm-hmm. I was I'm getting a ticket. I'm going. I can't wait to hear Against the Wind live. Mm-hmm. That was my bucket list live show for 2020. But kind of to Zach's point, I would just love to, be back to hugging friends and seeing local shows, and I miss all of my all the bands that I booked. They're all close friends, and it's it's beyond saddening to basically like, when I build the season. So for the listeners on the East Coast, GOE, the Ground Like O, runs from March until August, and I start booking the show in like January, and man, I had a great lineup. It was going to be an amazing year, and as March progressed, and as February and March progressed, and the news got worse and worse, it was just like watching a door shut. To a dream that would never be realized. And I feel, I'm not alone in that suffering. Needless to say, we all have lost so much. But if anyone from the LA scene is listening to this, please know that I love you and I miss you. And I wish I was watching you play.
Same.
I don't know any of these people, so JK. Just kidding.
So you don't love or miss them.
They're all good folks.
No, I believe it. I believe. Yeah, I miss my people too. I miss my people, and it breaks my heart that other people are missing their people too. This just aside from being fiscally, devastating and artistically crushing. It's like it just. I'm going to go ahead and say that it hurts my feelings. What is happening right now.
Same.
It bums me out. But to brighter times and to finding solutions and making it work. And please log on to NIVA's website, NIVASSOC.org, and take action. If you're listening to this, it's probably not too late. And yeah.
And also, a big shout out to Music Cares. Follow them on Instagram as well. There's a lot of depressed musicians right now, and they are a resource when it comes to psychological care, drug care, rehabilitation, and all of those things are going to be vital during this period of, reconstruction. So, please know that there's a lot of musicians out there that are suffering, and they're going to need all the help they can get. And, just do what you can. As we've been kind of lamenting over the past couple hours is just buy music, support artists. That's what you can do right now as a listener of music. Maybe don't get Postmates tonight. Maybe spend that on on somebody's Bandcamp or somebody's Patreon. Whatever the case may be.
Or watch their live stream and throw a couple dollars into their Venmo or whatever.
Anything helps, and everything helps. Zach, did you have any closing statements, like Maury Povich style?
Yes. I just want to thank Ben Redell for being our first guest on the Spencer and Zach Explores the Universe podcast, and for contributing all your excellent insight and just being a good friend and good musician. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for having me. Sorry if I kind of get all Sally Struthers, like I get a little tear in my voice when I get serious. So I hope the listeners can forgive me for that.
No. There's no room for emotional vulnerability on this program. You will be
if you have some sort of after effect that takes away the Sally Struthers voice, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll just pitch your.
Yeah, we'll put you through the macho.
Yeah,
filter.
the Macho Man Randy Savage filter. Yeah, everything you said is going to sound like a Slim Jim commercial.
It'll sound like Macho Man Randy Savage talking about football the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Which I assume he gets enthusiastic about.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all. It's time for Happy Hour, presented by Main Spirits. It is my goal today to welcome you firstly to Happy Hour. Welcome to Happy Hour. And now we're going to show you how to make a delicious seasonal beverage. And if you're here in Maine, and maybe you are, maybe you're not, but you can use all fresh ingredients. The wife and I, mainly the wife, are growing vegetables and fruits in our yard, and both of these ingredients, strawberries and basil, which I'll be using in this drink, we grew in our yard. So, we're going to learn you how to make a strawberry basil margarita. Let's get our tools together. We're going to need a shaker, a strainer, a muddler, and a glass of your choice. For ingredients, we will need the following: Cazadores tequila reposado, fresh strawberries sliced, fresh basil leaves, fresh squeezed lime juice, and simple syrup. Let's build this thing. In a shaker full of ice, combine 2 ounces Cazadores tequila reposado, 2 fresh sliced strawberries, and 6 torn basil leaves. Now, muddle until well combined. Now, add 1 ounce of lime juice and a ½ ounce of simple syrup, or sour mix if that's what you're using, and shake until everything is cold. Lastly, strain it into a glass, this glass of your choice that we talked about before, and garnish with a fresh basil leaf that you have not destroyed with the muddler. Let's take a sip. Snap, it's so good. Turns out tequila and fruit and sugar all taste really good together. Not that you needed me to tell you that, but the basil's a nice little zing-a-zing-zing garden twist. This has been a happy hour. You can learn more about these recipes and other recipes by visiting mainspirits.com. You can follow them on Instagram at main_spirits, or you can download their app for your smartphone, but not for your dumb phone. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, we encourage you to drink deliciously and responsibly. Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe is brought to you by Main Spirits. You can visit them online at mainspirits.com, or download their app, or visit them on Instagram at main_spirits. The show is also brought to you by Bull Moose, serving Maine and New Hampshire's music, movie, video game, and book and trinket needs since 1782. Also brought to you by Sun Tiki Studios at 375 Forest Avenue or at suntikistudios.com. Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe is a Mistakes Were Made production.